You're listening to the Soul Patch Podcast.
Tainted perception distorts my true meaning is blurred. I am lost to the echoes and whispers.
So guys, I was on Facebook the other day and I decided to start a thread to try just to get a little bit of research about, what are those things that people do outside of going to Hongdae and Itaewon? Because I'll full confession here, when I was a new teacher, and for the first several years, I was kind of a permanent fixture down in Hongdae and Itaewon. That's where I spent most of my free time. I think there's a statue of me in Itaewon somewhere commemorating.
I've seen it. It's the one it's like behind the dumpster, right?
It's behind the dumpster. It's kind of hunched over. Vomiting. No,
it's called Tall Bald Man.
Tall bald man. No, I had a little hair back then. It wasn't a full head.
Corrected.
But yeah, I mean, it kind of. If you ever do one of those thought experiments where if where you like ask yourself, I wonder how much money I've spent on alcohol in my life, and it's the answer. It's kind of an answer you don't want to know, but I would say a pretty penny down there in Hongdae and Itaewon for myself personally. But I threw out this question in the thread was, outside of the Hongdae and Itaewon, what are some of the activities and things that you guys do? And these are teacher groups that I'm not just teacher groups, expat groups. What are some of the activities that you guys do? Got involved in Korea. And my second question was, how much was language a barrier? Because I think that's something that a lot of people are a little bit hesitant about, is like, well, I can't speak Korean, so I can't take this class. I can't join this club or whatever. And so I got a lot of really interesting answers, but I think I'll just start with you guys first. What did you do?
I want to be specific with this one when we're talking about what we do. Let's start not about what we do now, because now we've been here for a really long time and we've got the system down. We've got, some language and things like that. And my first year plus in Korea, I spent a lot of time in Hongdae and Itaewon as well. I love those places. Hongdae is really fun. But that same year, I was also involved. I think my main hobby that first year I was here, I was doing Kongsudo, which is a kind of martial arts in here. And so that was when I was still really new to Korea, even though I was, out and partying as well. That's when I was new and still trying to find stuff. And I got into martial arts again.
Were you nervous about it though? I mean, for myself, I feel like it was too scary. Yeah, I felt incompetent, linguistically.
See, again, for me in this specific situation, at least, I was really lucky because as I mentioned during one of our very early episodes, maybe like the how we came, maybe it was in episode 1, how we came here. I was working with, there was one foreigner in the Hagwon where I was working, James, who was a Gyopo. James, if you're ever listening to this, give me a call. Good guy. And he saved me and introduced me to Korea and made life very comfortable for me because he spoke Korean decently well and had been living in Korea and understood culture and everything like that. And he was doing Kongsudo at the studio first. And so he was already,
so he kind of brought you into the
exactly
fold. Yeah.
So
okay.
He was like, yo, you want to join me for some martial arts? And I was like, yeah, that sounds really cool. And so then I went and he did a lot of translation for me. But to be clear, even though he was translating for the important things, when you're in the middle of a martial arts class, you don't really have time to translate full sentences and things like that. He might yell like 1 or 2 commands or something over at me just if I was completely like lost. But what I found was that you can do pretty well even without any language, especially with these types of physical activities. Like I did yoga in another studio, and Kongsudo is pretty easy as well, or any martial art for this, because it's just following along, right? Master's up in the front of the room, he's doing a bunch of punches, I do a bunch of punches. He does a bunch of kicks, I do a bunch of kicks. And so it wasn't as difficult as I thought it would be. And and everyone was really cool and everyone was really friendly in there as well. Like, you know, there was the other guys and they spoke as much English as I spoke Korean at the time, but we'd be in the changing room, you know, putting on our clothes and just joking around as much as we could or as little as we could. And it was a fun experience. And then I ended up going to Hongdae with those guys and hang out, even though again our communication was minimal at best.
Yeah.
It didn't affect, it had very little effect on my overall ability to enjoy the hobby
Yeah.
there. And so it's a matter of just jumping in and going for it, because language, depending on the hobby, is maybe not as important. And what did you guys do your first year? And we can talk about what we're doing now, but
Well, maybe I'll ask Ryan. Did you have like what was your first like formal, you know, kind of class like hobby in Korea? Did you sign up for anything like that or participate in anything like that?
When I came to Korea, before I really dug into anything that I needed to do, like professionally, like the reason for being here, I spent the first about a month and a half just getting used to being here. So I took a class, I took Korean class. Through that, you know, you meet some people, and I already had an advantage because I had a friend who had lived here for a year prior, and he's a very social guy in general, but he really flourished here. You know, some people, like, they really do well in foreign settings.
I know.
Yeah, just if you're listening to the podcast and you haven't traveled yet, you might surprise yourself. I mean, I know I did. I'm way more social when I'm on the road. I don't know where it comes from because it's not my personality, but get me away from the routine and suddenly I love meeting everybody. So anyway, yeah, he's like this by default. And so it was like turned up to 11 when he came here. So I landed and I was with a crew of like maybe like 20 people. And among them, they were a little abnormal for the average foreigners. Most of them were foreigners. In that they were all like really stoked on being in Korea and learning the language, learning the culture, a little bit more than what I would consider like average. So the group I was with of foreigners really plugged into groups of friends who were also Korean. And so I had I had an easy landing. I mean, it could have been easy.
Your experience, like your initial like you know, experience in Korea is unlike anyone I've met before. Like yours is really special and in like a really good way too.
Yeah. I mean, I was blessed. Like, I think most people when they arrive, they're coming solo. Maybe with one friend or maybe with a boyfriend or girlfriend, or something like this, but typically solo. And even if you're with a friend, then it's like the two of you making your way and doing things like what Kevin's talking about, like joining classes and clubs. I mean, it's got to be clutch to be in a new place. But yeah, I didn't have so much of a need for that. So that first year, I took a little Korean class briefly, traveled a lot, domestically, got around Korea a bit. Yeah, I wasn't biking yet. I hadn't really explored urban running. Like that's something I can talk about later, because now, you know, that's like my biggest thing. Whereas back in Chicago, I would only run in the parks or on the tracks, like specific places, or treadmill that I had in the house. But it's really cool because we've been here a long time. You guys came here 15 years ago, would that be right? I came here 20 years ago. You know, it was 2002. You know, when I came here, it was hard to find bread. You know what I mean? Like there was like one bread, like the white bread, you know, Wonder Bread. There wasn't like Paris baguette wasn't, you know, ubiquitous and you know, I think at the time the new thing was like kimbap changguk was like the new thing, was these like kimbap changguk restaurants and stuff like that. So as far as like when I was reading through the comments from the comments on Facebook from the expats, a lot of them are describing activities that weren't really
accessible 20 years ago. I mean, I'm sure they had yoga classes 20 years ago, but getting in, you know, as far as just like how many yoga studios there are now, I see them everywhere. And so
Oh yeah.
Pilates. So I'm just looking through I'm just kind of looking through some of the comments.
I found a yoga place my second year here in Korea. Actually, I was down in Suwon as well at this time. So this was back in 09, 10, something like that. And even in Suwon, and I found a yoga studio down there to join. And that was the same thing, actually. I got into that. And again, I'd done yoga a lot when I was in university. And so because I already had a background in it, it wasn't very hard for me to copy. Like I didn't know what the hell they were saying, especially yoga poses. Something interesting about yoga, by the way, in Korea, for any yoga doers out there, in America, they tend to use always the American pose names, like, you know, chair, wheel, crow, things like that. In Korea, even though they're speaking Korean, they tend to use all the Sanskrit names.
Oh, really? So it'll be like Ashtanga, whatever.
Well,
like,
yeah, Ashtanga.
I don't know what that means.
Yoga, but yes.
Okay.
But they use the Sanskrit names, and so even though they're speaking Korean already, so I don't understand what they're saying, and then they're using the Sanskrit names for the poses, and so I really don't know what they're saying. Even if it was in English, I still wouldn't have known what.
So you're like two degrees of separation away from understanding there.
But again, like any physical, like the martial arts class, I already had a background in yoga from doing it in university, and so it's not that hard to really quick look up at the teacher who's at the front and be like, oh, she's doing that, and then I do it because I already know what it is. And so I was like one pose behind everyone in the class, but I was able to follow along. So yoga existed then. Now definitely it's easier. I actually just a few years ago now, pandemic has messed my whole internal timeline up. I found a really good yoga studio in Itaewon that's an English based, and they actually have like power yoga and things like that. So now there's even English yoga, which is easier to do. But yeah, that's everywhere. Exercises everywhere.
Yeah,
I mean, sorry, go ahead, man.
If they want to like do things like one-on-one, like personal training, I was kind of surprised to discover that you don't really have to find like specifically English speaking services. Like people will just struggle with you if you aren't like, capable in the language. It's like, it's much more of an open door than you might be thinking. So if that's something that
I guess
you want to do that when you get here with a trainer, don't worry about it.
And something along those lines is, you know, you said, Jack, that you're really afraid you were afraid of trying to like stumble through it without language.
Yeah. For
people who haven't traveled, if you have traveled, you've already experienced this, and if you haven't really traveled that much, it's amazing what you can do without language.
Yeah. Or just really with like, you mean with like facial expressions, body language?
Exactly. And like Ryan said, people here are very overall willing to sweat it out with you and get you to understand whatever it is that you need to be doing.
Like in a situation like that, if you're with a personal trainer, you're going to feel a little nervous and awkward. Maybe I could see that, but it'll just be fun.
And you guys completely nailed the consensus as far as what the responses were, because everybody's had the same response as you. It's like, oh, I didn't speak much Korean, but they worked with me. I was able to, figure it out together using body language, facial, just expressions and stuff like that. And so they were able to, take these classes and participate in them. And it ended up for some of the respondents, it completely changed their experience in Korea, because they made friends, not just with like other foreigners, but they formed close friendships with other Korean people, with native people here, and were able to go have dinner at their house, see parts of the country and experience things that you would never, kind of have access to without knowing somebody who's Korean,
I think that's one of the great things about those types of hobbies as well. And I actually recommend this for people I recommend it to my students as well, but just for anyone, if you want to learn the language, learning going to this type of club or activity or something like that is the best way to do it, because like language exchanges or going to the bar or something like that, like you might be able to practice your Korean or English, if I'm talking to my students, but then you're sitting around drinking and you're like, oh, what do we talk about other than drinking? Right. And there's not much there. But when you're going to a yoga club, or when I started doing free diving, for example, or whatever it is, you know, everyone has their own thing. You're there because you love activity A, whatever that activity is. And the other people who are Korean people are also there because they love activity A. And so therefore you have something to talk about. And so it gives you a reason, like, I want to talk to you, not because I'm trying to work on my Korean, but because I want to talk to you, because I want to talk about the hobby, whatever the interest is.
Mhm.
And
It's
so
also
it
kind of
keeps,
general,
it
like,
makes it
that's
much more
like a
easy
general
to
life
learn.
tip too, right?
We should just change this, the life
Well, I
tips
mean,
in
We just
Korea.
can't.
it's like if you're
It's
like
true
a
though.
young,
No, it's
if you're a young
absolutely.
university student and you think you just want to hang out at the pub every night, and I mean, sure, that's cool. You could have some fun, but if you want to network and make useful relationships, meaningful relationships, you know, things that'll carry you forward in both like everything from, you know, your job to romance, do like Kevin's talking. I mean, do something.
Yeah.
You know?
True.
But it's such a trap though. You know what I mean? Like, it's so, drinking culture here, you know, is so, there's such less judgment, you know, like than in America. You know what I mean? Like, it's I know it sounds terrible, but it's almost like you know, the movie Leaving Las Vegas or something, you know, where he's just like, I'm just gonna go to Vegas and you know, it's it is a trap that can suck you in, and you have to fight against that, especially if you have that kind of personality, like I did. Like, I like going out, you know, I do, but it does get so repetitive and so redundant, and it's so, you're not learning anything. You're not moving forward. And
Well,
so
and with drinking, remember that I think these things are not mutually exclusive, Jack. I had another friend of mine a few years ago who, and this is very expat community. And again, now, you know, not, we've mostly been talking about hobbies with Korean people, but the expat community in Korea is huge at this point now, and you can find most of whatever you want to do in English. So I had a buddy of mine who loved to go to Itaewon and go drinking. Good on him. And he loved playing darts, and so he joined a dart league in Itaewon.
that's on the
And
list.
So
Yeah.
yeah, there you go. And so he would, you know, every, I don't remember what it was, Wednesday, Thursday night, or whatever darts night was, he would go out and he put 1 or 2 or 3 pints into his head every night, but he was socially doing it, not just for the sake of let's go to Itaewon and drink, but you know, I'm playing an activity. I'm doing my thing.
And
so
I'm
that's possible as well.
exaggerating too a little bit.
Judgment against like drinking. That wasn't my point. Like, if someone like joins a club where they're doing whatever, like they want to ride bicycles, but the club drinks a beer every kilometer, fine, if that's what's fun. I was just saying that I was just saying that to
kilometer beers on a bike.
Like,
whoa.
What I'm
That's
trying
too
to say
quick.
is, like, if you're traveling, like not even in Korea, if you're just in a new city, if you're just landing in a new neighborhood where you don't know people, like the default often is, hey, I'm just going to go and like crawl around tonight, see what's going on. What you're probably going to get is like a few pints, right?
Yeah.
Might make some buddies or whatever. But if you want to actually like get to know the culture of an area, especially if you're on the road traveling, one of the smartest things you can do is just join a class, like especially if you're backpacking. There's so many like day classes anywhere you go. Just go take a painting class, you know?
And the community centers often offer free stuff too. Like, there are things for expats here that are kind of culturally, there's a ton of stuff, but yeah,
I'm sure there's like kimchi making classes and stuff like that,
yeah,
like all the time.
I'm being a little bit, you know, I'm kind of exaggerating, or I don't want to say playing like devil's advocate or whatever, but I'm kind of trying to give a counterpoint to that narrative that you hear often, is that, oh, Korea, you teach in Korea, you live in Korea, oh, it's just for drinking, you know, that's all you do there, is just get drunk.
Is that
you
a
know,
thing?
Because
Do people think that?
oh yeah. I mean, they think it's a big, you know, like a big drinking, you know, you're Hagwon teacher / weekend warrior, you know, go out every Thursday,
really
Friday,
depends
Saturday.
on the type of expat you are. I mean, if we've been here for a really long time, and so our lives now have, you know, we're older. I can't drink as much as I used to, just straight up. I hangovers are bad. They're bad. When I first came to Korea, it wasn't a big deal. But you know, if you're here for 1 year, doing a hagwon job, then yeah, going out is going to be much more of an activity than, I mean, it was my first year here, than other things. But you can still find those other things.
And we don't have to keep going on about the drinking thing, but I was just interested in how many responses I got that were so diverse, that people were getting into, even after just being here for a short while. So I'm just going to throw some at you guys.
Well, Jack, before you do that, what have you gotten into? Because you haven't actually told us what are some of your hobbies?
Okay,
or like
so all right, like I said, the full confession, I would say my first 5 or 6 years in Korea, I was a piss artist. It was Itaewon, it was Hongdae, then it was Hongdae and Itaewon. And around the age of like 29, I got my stuff together. I kind of got myself together. I started teaching at Junggang University. I got the uni job. I took it very seriously, and got married, had a kid, went back to school. A lot of really good things happened in my 30s, right? But so building up to that, I started learning jujitsu. That was nice. one thing that I actually did, which is I realized very, very popular. It's a very, very popular activity among expats. There were, for every like 3 or 4 comments, as far as like martial arts is concerned, it was jujitsu. And I know there's an academy called the John Frankel. He's I think he trained with Henzo Gracie. I know he trained at the Gracie Academy, and then he came to Korea, and he kind of started jujitsu in Korea, and trained a bunch of teachers who are kind of spread out all over. And I had a problem with the language barrier too, because my master didn't speak any English, and also I was a little bit older. Like I said, I was kind of behind the curve a little bit, so I got into these activities a little bit later, after I'd been here for more than 10 or 15 years, when I started getting into jujitsu, and I did find it challenging when they're trying to explain something. But I think jujitsu is a little bit different than like taekwondo or hapkido or something, in that there's some very technical there are very technical aspects of it that are a little bit difficult without having somebody explain it in English. And so there were a couple of foreigners in the class, and we got by and stuff. But I spent a lot of time getting choked out and tapping out. I'm sure it was enjoyable for
learning jujitsu.
Yeah, just purple belts and blue belts beating the shit out of me for an hour and a half every day, which I would leave with the biggest smile on my face. It was the happiest time. Unfortunately, I quit due to broken rib injury, but it was great fun. It was great fun. I still love it. But
it's interesting how you said that there's so many jujitsu things around. I think one thing as well is it's really amazing so many hobbies that you get into in Korea, because it's important for a lot of people to remember, if they haven't been in Korea, depending on where they come from, Korea's got a lot of people in a small area, right? I mean, Seoul and Gyeonggi surrounding, there's 20 million people here. It's crazy. Just 10 million in Seoul. So whatever hobby you get into, there's a fucking lot of people that are doing it here, like a lot. I was shocked a few years ago when I was in uni again. I used to do a lot of rock climbing, and so I brought my shoes and my harness here when I came, and I didn't touch them for 10 years because I just didn't know anyone then. But I was like, someday I'm going to get back into rock climbing again. And then finally a few years ago, a friend of a friend was like, oh wait, you like rock climbing? I do too. Let's go out together. And I'm sure you guys have noticed, if you're just around the city, there's like outside rock walls, like there's some up on there's by the river, there's just all over the place in the city. It's really kind of cool. There's free walls that you can use as long as you have the gear. And so he was like, I've got the gear, let's go to a wall. And so we go out to this wall to try and start climbing. And me and him were two relatively young guys, we were in our like early 30s at the time. But neither of us had been climbing in a long time. We're like, let's see how well we can do this. And we get out there, and there's all these like not old, but like Korean people in their like 50s, even 60s, and they're just rocking up these rocks. Yeah. And there's a whole group of them. There's like all of them. They're just sitting there, all watch each other. They've got all the gear, and they're hardcore. hardcore climbers, and they're badass as well. And they've been doing it for a long time. And so rock climbing, which I thought was a somewhat niche activity, and maybe it is, maybe even the fact that, only a very small percentage of all Korean people go rock climbing, that small percentage of 10 million people is still a lot of people.
Every single club you can think of, there is a club here. I had a student.
If you're
sorry,
curious,
go ahead,
like,
Ryan.
I was just going to say, if anybody's listening, if you think your hobby's like esoteric and strange, I challenge you to just Google it, or even better, Naver it, if you can translate it for yourself, and then type in like soul. You'll be really surprised. Like downstairs for me, there's a little storefront place where a lady's teaching macrame. So if that's your jam,
that's on the list.
It's on the list. Your list is pretty extensive.
It is. I'm telling you, man. These people. I got more than 100 commenters because this kind of conversation really fired people up. They're really excited about this, and I framed it.
Talk about what they like doing, so it makes sense. That's
well,
cool.
so I had a student a long time ago. Not this is he was a company worker guy. And his hobby was hang gliding.
Nice.
It was so new in Korea that these crazy mother effers built their own hang gliders.
What?
Like they didn't buy them. They didn't buy them from like a professional hang gliding. Now they do, but at the time it was so new that they would build their own, and then they would go hang gliding, and they did that until somebody died. And then after a person died, I don't know why I'm telling the story. It's fascinating. But somebody did pass away. Epic. Someone crash landed.
Made their own hang glider.
Yeah, they would design their own. I mean, these guys were engineers. I mean, they were worked for Doosan or something. But it was fascinating. I was like, my God, you're nuts. But that was what he loved doing. And his mother was so scared. She bought him a life insurance policy just out of fear that something bad would happen to him, or a insurance policy so that if he crashes, he can get the best care.
That's an interesting one that gets me thinking, because one thing that I wanted to try and do here and wasn't able to find, although I haven't looked recently, and this was already a bunch of years, is I wanted to try and go skydiving here in Korea. And because I've been skydiving back in the States, but only a couple of times, and so I was like, I just want to do it again. It's fun to throw yourself out of an airplane. And I couldn't find it here in Korea at the time when I was looking. And again, this was a bunch of years ago already. I haven't looked recently, but I think that with certain sports about like being in the air and airfare, things are a little bit more regulated here because of the fact that we're still technically at war with the North and things like that.
Yeah.
So I think that's why skydiving was difficult to find. But again, this was a very long time ago, and it's entirely possible that's a thing now.
Yeah, I don't see like flying,
gliding, but what's paragliding? I know that's common here in Korea, or not common, but
when I've been on my bike on bike tours, I've seen people in ultralights.
Okay.
A lot of guys in Wisconsin have them. Like, these things, like a little go-kart with a chute behind it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah,
I've seen those here.
Okay. Oh well, one of the guys that I talked to in the Facebook group said he got into racing, motorcycle racing, car racing. So there are tracks where you can go out and you can do car racing.
I mean, I know I've had students who tell me that they do that.
My bicycle too, going south, like towards somewhere between. I mean, it's a long shot, but somewhere between here and Daegu, there's an area where I've seen like motocross.
Nice.
Yeah. You could even do they even have horse, you can ride horses. You can do a horse racing. There's a racetrack, so you can, if you're into that sort of thing.
Wait, actually, like doing the racing yourself?
You can't race on the horse, but you can ride horses in Korea, but you can't you cannot race them unless you're I guess a certified jockey, I suppose.
Yeah, that's kind of tough. That's not a normal hobby.
I don't know. I'm 6'8", a 2 meter jockey. That would be a sight to see. I was just trying to think of like a couple of other things that we mentioned before. We don't have to bring up hiking because hiking was a very popular one, but we've talked about hiking a lot. But
it's just ubiquitous.
Yeah, there's hiking clubs, there's hiking groups. So that's a thing that a lot of the foreigners got into because I think the barrier to entry is so low. I mean, what do you need?
Oh, yeah.
Literally a pair of shoes and some clothes, you know, some shorts and a t-shirt.
Yeah, and it's also a cool activity because unlike if you're like gonna go biking or running or even if you're doing like taekwondo, like hiking, it's way casual. Like you're talking the whole time.
It's social. Yeah, exactly.
It's hanging out,
True.
walking. You know?
Right. Yeah. I mean, when you're going up, you might be talking a little less than on your way down,
Yeah.
but
it's probably the next on this list if you really want to be social, I think, or golf.
Some hiking trails.
Golf's
as well,
on the
for
list
people
too. Yeah.
Listening, some hiking trails are pretty gnarly here in Korea. They're
Intense,
not very long. Like the mountains here aren't very tall because, you know, we're on a small peninsula. It's near sea level, of course, but some of them, like you're pulling yourself up ropes and things. Like
Yeah,
there's some
Like
pretty tough trails.
even right in the city. Like if you go behind our campus, like Gwanaksan, like kind of the main trail of Gwanaksan, that's a son of a bitch. Like, I mean, I challenge it. I don't care.
Man, going from 100 building to 300 building at your campus is a son of a bitch, in my opinion. You know,
I'm just saying, like, people are like, yeah, I'm really fit. Yeah, you might get up there, but you're gonna break a sweat. I mean, it's a journey, and it's gonna take your day, and you're gonna sleep really well. And that's right here in the city.
That's awesome.
Yeah, off my roof.
You literally just walk out of your house and just get a great workout. I mean, it's so and meet people. There's a running club. I think it's called I believe the name of it is Soul Flyers Club. Is that the one you recommended, Ryan? That
okay? So I'm not part of the club. I've never paid the dues.
Yeah.
I've been aware of them because I've been to like running shops and stuff, and I've met some people that are in it. I've had a couple of students that have been in it. The Soul Flyers Club is pretty cool for if you're a foreigner, because that's kind of its origin and why it exists. It's old. I think it goes back to like 2005 or something. It's
I think so. Yeah.
The purpose of it, and you could probably understand this. Like, imagine you drop into Seoul and you want to, and your hobby is running, long distance running, and you just want to, like, you know, every year you do a couple 5Ks or a 10K or maybe even like a marathon or half marathon. How do you find these events? You know, if it's like the Seoul Marathon, you're going to see that. It'll be around you. But for other types of like fun runs and things like this, it's not the easiest thing to search, at least especially, you know, back then. So
you need to get plugged in, you know, and that's what it does, you know.
Yeah. So it's a way to get plugged in. If you go on their website, you can check it out. They boast of having a real eclectic group, which I'm sure is the case. People from all around the world, from Asia, Scandinavia, I mean, anywhere, South America, everywhere. So it's pretty great. They share running routes too. And I know I've talked about this before, but I want to sell it to the audience because it was such a wake up for me. I like running. I've always liked running. I've always preferred to run in nature, right? I mean, that makes sense. Trail running, right?
Yeah.
Fresh air.
I agree. I used to do a bit of running back home, but
yeah, like where would it be better? Like, wait. Here's the twist. Normally, like Wisconsin has a lot of running culture. It's very flat and relatively clean air, lots of open space. You would think that would be better. And I'm not saying one's better or worse, but I've come to really love urban running because of Korea, because of Seoul. And I think I said this in the previous podcast, but again, it bears repeating because it's really cool. If you're a runner, I really encourage you to give it a go in a dense urban place like Seoul, where instead of running like you have to run a loop, you can run any distance you want. So like when I go out, I rarely decide like today I'm running 20K, you know, like that's a massive day for me. I rarely decide that. In fact, the last 20Ks that I've run, I've never planned any of them. It just happens. And it can, because you never have to think, where's my turnaround or what is the trail I'm on? You don't have to have a trail. You can just go out your door and run. And when you're done, taxi, subway, bus. Like, there's always a way home.
Right.
And you've got, the bike trails you can run isolated from traffic, real easy to route using neighbor maps, or like the Seoul Flyers Club, people post their popular run routes. They share stuff like this. And yeah, it's just a fantastic way to do that hobby. Like if you're running in the countryside, yep, fresh air, it's really nice. It's much more peaceful, much more beautiful. But what's really nice in the city is maybe you run a 10K and you're feeling amped, but man, you just really need like some water, some Gatorade. You need to use a bathroom or something. It's no problem. Anywhere you are, you've got facilities for everything. You could stop and have lunch and then go run another 10K.
Yeah.
It's really nice.
Yeah, that's that is very interesting. I can kind of see your point actually. And I think we talked about this too, is that there is some nature kind of embedded in the urban sphere or whatever. And so you're still you might be near a mountain, even though you're still near a convenience store.
Even without the mountains, for running at least, or biking or skateboarding, there's a lot of rivers, a lot of flat places to run in Seoul, which are easy. So even it's easy to forget how much nature there is in Seoul, because I mean it's a jungle. It's a concrete jungle, but there's a surprising amount of trees and streams and mountains streams, all mixed throughout.
That's a really good point, especially for runners and bikers. But like, okay, everybody knows, you look at a map of Seoul, what do you see? Big river in the middle, right? Okay, well, obviously that big river, the Han River, you can go running on that, you can go biking on that, and it's nice flat lands, real easy, right? Next to the river is always gonna be flat. But you can live anywhere in the city and you're going to be near a trail next to a river, because even if you're not near the Han River, there's tributaries going to the Han, and they all have paved, segregated from traffic, bicycle / walking paths. And there's both bicycle and walking path, and you can go run there.
Some of them even have that rubberized kind of ground, right? Where it has a little bit of give too, so it's not so hard on your joints and stuff.
Well, like along the river as well, there's one of the bigger rivers.
Oh, you run barefoot then? Yeah, for sure.
So the last 2 years I've been slowly like switching over to barefoot running, and you can easily run barefoot on these trails because they're just kept so well.
Yeah. So I think we've debunked that idea where I use teacher as a euphemism for expat, but there of course could be students or anybody else. But that idea that I can't make any friends in Korea. It's impossible to meet people in Korea. It's just,
Jack, I'm curious what you have on your list, because pretty much all of the activities we've talked about make it sound like we're the most healthy people on the planet.
Let me square this.
Running, biking, hiking.
No. The only time you'll see me running is if I'm being chased by something. So that's the only
subway.
Yeah. Maybe in Wisconsin there'd be, there's a bear. If you see me running, there's a bear nearby.
But I will say that, I mean, Korea, like, it's very easy to stay healthy, and there's health clubs and yoga and Pilates all over the place. But what do you have on your list that people have suggested that were not?
Well, okay. Let me do the last couple physicals, because this one's really funny.
Oh, okay.
I got one more. Pilates is one that's become popular recently, but also a couple of people in the commenters were into pole dancing. So
my wife got really into that a few years ago before she had back problems. Actually, she loved it. She said it was super fun.
Yeah, it's great exercise. Yeah, that was so there's I think pole dancing, and also the one where they have like when you go to like Cirque du Soleil or whatever, and they have those like long like cloths. Like there's
flying yoga.
Flying yoga. That's what I'm thinking of.
My wife also did that before she had back problems a couple of years ago. Those are pole dancing. I will say, because my wife was doing that for a while. That's it's not cheap, actually. Those studios tend to be a little bit more expensive because they need a lot more space. Because
you can only pay in Chanwons, right? No, I'm sorry, that was a bad joke. Okay, terrible joke. But boom. That was so bad. That was so bad.
But
Yeah.
No, so pole dancing is, yeah, definitely a thing. And there's quite a few of them. My wife found quite a few. There weren't, unfortunately, any in our neighborhood. She had to commute to it.
Yeah, it sounds
This was
like
already a
something
few
in
years ago.
Gangnam or
It was very, yeah,
something.
she was going to Gangnam at the
Yeah.
time. I don't remember exactly where, but something like that. But yeah,
Yeah.
again, every hobby. So what have you got that's not physical on that list? I'm curious, what are people learning or doing?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I kind of broke it up into like sports and leisure. So as far as leisure is, one person had an interesting idea. He said he or she said, start a conversation with a Korean person about food. You just talk, because Korean people love to talk about their cuisine. And so I thought that was kind of interesting. It's like a pretty clever way, because I mean, if you watch TV in Korea, every third channel is some kind of food preparation.
That's one of the observations that I've heard many people make. Like when you turn on Korean television, you surf the channels, what do you get? You've got food, fishing, and video games.
Right,
like,
right.
Things that you notice like are more than what would be at home. There's more of
I mean,
those.
that's a word that's in English now, is mukbang, right? It's the eating programs, and that's a Korean thing, but it's in English. Like you see people talking about their mukbang shows in it. That's how American YouTubers talk about it as well. So yeah, food is definitely.
And
definitely
so, and
big.
these are not exactly just like activities, but these are also ways to, communicate with people. So to overcome the language barrier, some of the people mentioned using, just like Google Translate, Papago, Duolingo, those kinds of things are good tools. But as far as activities go, one of them is gardening. A couple of people were getting into gardening. So if you have you'd kind of need like access to a rooftop where they have some kind of
thing, I think, though, like, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's one thing that is kind of neat about Korea. If you get a little bit of elevation, you look out at the rooftops, what do you see? You see a lot of people growing stuff.
A lot of urban gardening. Yeah.
Yeah. Rooftop gardening is very common here.
We're doing a ton here.
I mean, you could go to like I think we talked about this before, but like a really nice apartment complex, and you see like a Mercedes, a BMW, and then one whole car parking spot is like dried what do you call them, peppers, you know what I mean, where it's just like you're just like, what the hell, like it's just like a parking spot full of dried peppers. That's
I've seen a lot on the river as well, where people I don't know exactly like how they set these up, but when I'm biking on the river, I'll see like little farm plots along the river that people have set up. And I'm not sure if they're like, I don't think they're city design. Like maybe it's like a club or some neighborhood group.
I think you can rent
this X
a little spot too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So urban gardening
in Boston, there was an area like that. I think New York had one. Chicago has one. Yeah, that's like you rent like a little plot of land.
Kind of what I'm guessing they are.
A hobby garden.
Yeah. So yeah, urban gardening, a motorcycle club. Those you see like 5 or 6 guys on these choppers, and they got leather jackets on, and they look super scary, and it's super loud. This guy that I talked to said they are the nicest people you'll ever meet in your life. Like they just took them under their wing, and he took tours all across the country. Now you'd have to be here for a while. That's a lot of teaching money to buy a chopper, I imagine, a Harley Davidson or something, and you're going to have to spend some money to maintain it. But that was something that somebody really, really enjoyed. So
that'd probably be a cool way to get around the country.
My girlfriend's sister's boyfriend, he's a Harley guy from the States, and he just recently got plugged in with them.
Yeah.
And yeah, same story.
So they're really cool.
That'd be a good way to get around the country too, because you can't take motorcycles on the freeways, so it forces you to use back roads.
You have to. Yeah, exactly. A couple of other ones, some of these are kind of obvious, like taking language class, studying Korean, but it doesn't have to be limited to Korean. I know a guy that takes a Spanish class, he's studying Spanish. So, I mean, it's a big city. You can probably learn Arabic if you wanted to. You could, anything. So, if you don't, it makes sense to learn Korean to me, but if it's not your thing, and you want, or you already know how to speak Korean and you want to learn something else, there's, language classes are great places to meet people. Photography, cooking classes,
Nice.
hanging out at coffee shops, learning how to sew. One woman said she used the pandemic time to actually learn how to sew using like YouTube tutorials. So she got kind of into sewing and stuff like that. Not
Well, I mean,
exactly.
that's just a beautiful thing about the internet is you can do anything from home, and the pandemic has only made that better. Like,
I know, yeah.
There's
Well,
videos for everything these days.
Or you can look at all the things that you should have done with the 2 years that you squandered watching Netflix. Stitch and Bitch. Have you ever heard of that before? Stitch and Bitch?
Is that a sewing club or a knitting club?
Yeah. Right. It's like a
think I've heard of
macrame. See, I was afraid to reply to that comment because I was like, I don't know what that means. Is it something, rude or whatever? But yeah, I asked the person, they said it's just like a sewing club. Like you get together, you crochet and you gossip. And so there are
Nice.
clubs like that. You can literally join that club. This one was pretty interesting. This was the Korean Traditional Performing Arts Center used to, this is 20 years ago, but they used to offer free classes with some English, and you could learn traditional Korean instruments like the gayagum and
Nice.
some stuff like that. So if you're a guitar player, you might actually be able to take to the gayagum looks more difficult than the guitar, but
Gayagum.
yeah, sorry, my pronunciation is terrible, but how would you, what does it look like, Kevin? How would you describe that thing?
Gayagum? It's a string instrument, but it's horizontal. It's laid out on a table.
Kind of sits in your lap, right? Or something like
usually
that?
on a table. They're too big for a lap. It's set out on a table in front of you, and there's a bunch of strings that just go, from left to right, and they're usually it's still a plucking instrument. It's not a bow instrument, although I've seen people use bows on them as well. And there's no frets, so it's much more like
they're pushing, they're using both hands
or something,
both hands, and they're plucking. And if you want to listen to
there's an amazing a
YouTube channel, this girl does Jimi Hendrix covers and stuff like that. Like, it's fantastic.
I'll plug her because it's badass.
Yeah, plug her
really quick.
Yeah.
She's awesome.
While you're finding that, I told a friend of mine, he put together, he started a company called LEP, and LEP stands for what does it stand for? I'm sorry. Language Exchange Party. And what he does, and so if you go on to Facebook and you look up LEP, Language Exchange Party, he actually has they will meet in certain bars, restaurants, cafes, and you can get together and you can speak Korean to other people that are learning Korean, and they kind of enforce like an only Korean.
I think that's nowhere near a new idea, though. There were clubs of the same exact thing that I went to in Hongdae when I was new to Korea, where it was like basically like a language night.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, where it was for young people to go, and they would like rent out kind of a studio of some kind, and you'd pay like $5 to get in. So
his is like $10.
Some drinks.
Yeah,
and this was 10 years ago, or more. And so you go in, and the idea behind it was that they would have I think they would change hours. It would be like, okay, now everyone speaks Korean for an hour, now everyone speaks English, or there was something like that. And sometimes it worked, and sometimes it didn't. But it was a very classic idea of combining our two favorite activities on a Friday night of drinking and trying to speak the language.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, it's cool to see it organized. One of the I'll hurry through some of these lists, but I don't know if you guys have ever been to Toastmasters. Are you familiar?
One of
with
our
that?
coworkers is super into it.
Mm-hmm.
That's his identity here, pretty much. He's like the Toastmasters guy.
Yeah. I haven't done it.
Probably. Has he won like some titles and stuff? Like, I've seen some stuff on his
Maybe.
desk.
He's all about it.
He's really stoked on learning Korean language as well, Korean culture, and I'm pretty sure he does his Toastmasters also in Korean.
Yeah,
and
he does both.
Spanish too. So yeah, definitely. If anybody is familiar with Toastmasters, where you're from, you can find it here. And again, in Spanish English.
I actually a former coworker of mine at our university was a member of Toastmasters as well. Just you know, if you're into public speaking and your teacher, it's good practice, you know, just really hone that skill. Swing dancing, salsa dancing, not really
I've done
my
salsa classes. I've
yeah,
done
not
salsa
my
classes
thing,
here,
but
actually.
yeah.
That was
You guys
fun.
miss camping. Like camping is definitely something we got to talk about.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
it's pretty simple to summarize too. Like if you like camping, if you like the outdoors and you're coming to Korea, and you probably see all these pictures online. If you type in Korea, what are you going to see? You're going to see probably lots of urban pictures, right? You see things like whatever, Seoul. But and you might see some beautiful landscapes and wonder, hey, is that accessible? How do I do that? You can, I know we talked this in a different podcast, but it bears repeating because I think this is a unique thing for Korea compared to many other countries I've traveled to, is that you can be in the middle, like I am next to Seoul Station. I can get on a subway in about maybe 45 minutes, an hour. I can be in a place where I can rent a tent. They will provide you with all the things you need for camping, and you can go camping for the night.
Yeah, and you
This
can
is
go
different. Just to be clear, this is very different from like backpacking camping.
Well, you can do that also. There's
That's
both.
hard to.
But
That's
what I'm-
harder
what
to
I'm-
find. That's harder to
Right.
find for campsites here.
Right. You have to dig in a little bit if you want to go. Well, it's the same thing if you're in the States. Like if you want to go backcountry, you know, you got.
I'm from a small town. For me, it was. I was surprised at how hard it was because in Flagstaff, you just like literally start walking out and you're like, I'm gonna go camp, and you're in the forest.
So you're gonna have a little more challenge here. But yeah, I mean, I've been on my bike and I've free camped and lit a fire, you know, and you know, responsibly, and did my thing. Yeah, I mean,
but
I've
that's
never
the cool thing is you can go from where you're talking about, which is like real, you know, salt of the earth camping, all the way up to like glamping, where it's basically a hotel room with a, you know, canvas wall.
Yeah,
you know,
you can get a tent with
Glamping
an air
is quite nice.
conditioning unit in it.
an
A
air
tent with
conditioning unit. Yeah,
and a refrigerator and a mattress.
I
And
yeah.
I've got nothing against that, man. Like, and I know a lot of people like it. Glamping's not camping. It's stupid. No, it's not, man. Glamping's awesome.
If it's fun,
Glamping is
it's
fantastic.
It's great.
I don't.
you
I
know?
don't consider it camping, but it is fantastic.
It's its own thing.
Yeah.
It's its own
Yeah,
thing.
it's its own thing.
It's
But it's
cool.
great.
Yeah, I love it.
But yeah, so I mean, really,
Yeah.
like we said, you know, Seoul has everything, and Korea, by extension, has more of it. It's like if there's something you can't find in Seoul, like surfing, go outside of Seoul and you'll be able to find it.
Yeah,
There aren't great waves here.
I was gonna
but
throw
you can find
that.
it.
Yeah, paddleboarding and surfing, barbecues, disc golf. You can find disc golf. I'll tell you another one that's not on the list,
I
but
need to-
they're ultimate
who said disc
frisbee
golf?
at the Hongdae.
Who said disc golf?
I
do
I
you know where
don't
they
know.
go?
Somebody is into disc golf. They I think
I
it's
used
Go
you have to
discing
go.
so much.
You have to go
Yeah.
outside of. You got to go out a little bit into
I'll have to look
the
into that.
country to find it.
I-
Yeah.
Look at Yongjae. I think Yongjae Park might have a course.
I miss
Mhm.
discing back home, but we used to do backcountry disking, just throwing discs at trees.
Did
Sure,
you
in
ever
Seoul, it's a little bit more
do-
manicured?
Well, did you ever do ultimate?
I have my discs. here.
Ultimate
I brought-
frisbee?
No,
Oh,
that's
okay.
different. I just would go disc golfing. I have my discs. I brought my
Yeah.
discs from the States. I've got a putter and 2 drivers.
I just looked it up for anybody listening. Seoul has 2 disc golf courses near World Cup Stadium.
Nice.
It's written in English. I don't know how to say this. Nanjicheon, Nanjicheon Park, and looks like no, I don't know where that is.
I wonder what disking is like here. And normal golf, of course, and
Yeah, I mean,
screen
normal
and
golf is
everything.
just but yeah, it's a
Town looks like the real deal, man. You should check it
Yeah.
out next.
that sounds very cool. Are you guys also familiar with like tabletop games like D&D and stuff like that? Like that is also
yeah, I DM, or I
you're
used to.
you're DM. Oh, you're dungeon master. Okay,
I
well,
was
respect.
before pandemic stopped me. I was.
I don't know anything about it, but I know that I had a friend in my jujitsu class who was also a member of a D&D club, and so he would go to Shincheon and he would play D&D that with some guys around that area. So I mean,
Yeah, that's another thing. Like we totally not on the list. You're looking for things that are not physical. Like what about both PC bongs and game cafes?
yeah,
So like PC Bong, most people that are looking at Korea or are here, you're obviously familiar with it. So PC Bong is a room filled with a ton of computers and you play video games. You've probably seen images of this. And then Game Cafe, it's like a coffee shop / restaurant type place where you can play everything from like, I don't know, Catan to cards or D&D.
Yeah, every game. There's piles and piles and piles of games.
Yeah, and that's a cool place to go because you're going to find Koreans there that will want to like hang out because, of course, practicing language, but they're going to want to make foreigner friends, which is you. So that's a good way to make friends.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So, I mean, you're really not limited to, it doesn't have to be an athletic, thing. It can be, like you said, something more intellectual pursuit or whatever. I think just as a last note here, I've even seen on Facebook some writing groups. So if your hobby is writing, you can meet once a week or once a month down in Itaewon at a cafe somewhere, and you actually critique each other's work. So if you need that kind of support and motivation, because sometimes when you're writing, it's tough to stay on top of it. But if you have some kind of external motivator where, okay, I got to get these many pages done by this time, or if you just if you're like me and you're a little bit lazy to read books, join a book club. I mean, there are
Did we mention Seoul Meetup?
I don't think so. We have in other podcasts. We have in other episodes.
Right.
Okay.
So yeah, we're kind of overlapping a look but it's worth just putting it here too. People don't hear.
Let's just finish up with that then, Ryan. Go ahead.
Yeah. And where can you find it too? Like, so people know where to go look for this sort of thing.
We can put the link in the description for the video or wherever you guys are publishing this. But Meetup is just like, it's in multiple cities. It's a website. It's also probably an app at this point. I haven't used it in years.
Yeah.
But in years gone by, I have. You can find anything. It's Meetup. And again, you're in a city of 20 million people. You're going to find a group that's into your thing. Meditation groups. One of my friends, he did weekly, it was like soul philosophers circle or something, and they would just talk about philosophy. They pick a different.
Oh, very cool. Yeah.
Really just any of your interests. It's a really good resource. It was for me at one point in time, and I might use it again in the future when I have some more free time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, like we said at the very beginning, we live in a city of millions and millions of millions of people. If there's a hobby you can't find here, please let us know.
But even for those in Daegu, those in Busan, those in Gyeonggi, like where I live, you can still find this stuff here too. You don't have to go to Seoul. Like it might take a little bit more work to, a little more searching online, but these groups exist all over the place. And, instead of just, I mean, I'm not going to bash Hongdae and Itaewon. That's, it's like cheesecake, but eat your vegetables. Join a book club, do something, that's a little bit healthier too. And I think those friendships that you make through those groups are really profound and strong. And I know you guys are a testament to that because you've made friends by doing those kinds of activities. So I don't know. Do we leave anything unsaid for this app?
Oh, we left a lot of things unsaid, but
a
you
lot,
can still
right?
find it all.
This is only part one of a 10-part series where,
we're going to list every possible hobby available to human beings.
Yeah. Yeah. But this was really eye-opening to me because I didn't really even realize what the extent to which some of these things, the extent to which they were available. Nice. So it's very cool to me. So anyway, listeners out there, you guys know where to find us. Just go to thesoulpatch.com. It's a one-stop shop. You can stream the episode right there. You can go to our YouTube channel if you like to look at our wonderful, beautiful faces while you listen to the podcast. You can also, leave a review if you could in Apple Podcasts. That will really, really help us out. If you could just leave a review in Apple Podcasts. And I guess we'll catch you next week at the Patch. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Later.
Later.
Nice.